Sacred cosmology, schools, and secret orders in ancient Egypt. 4 primary theological schools. Traditional Egyptology also compares cosmogonies from different temples and views them as isolated, self-contained mythological traditions. The philosophical differences between them are then explained as pre-dynastic tribal differences among the early Egyptians. These differences continued as theological disputes between priestly schools in later civilized times. The religious preferences of the monarchy often explain a mythic theme's predominance at a particular period. The creation of cosmic order was taught at Heliopolis, the geographic meeting place of the Nile Valley and Delta, as the genesis of a divine Ennead, or the company of 9 divinities. At Memphis, a powerful fiery triad was thought to have brought life at the beginning of time. The Middle Kingdom was ruled by an Ogdoad, a divine family of 8 deities at Hermopolis. At Thebes, another trinity of gods explained the emergence of life in the world. Scholars view Heliopolis, Memphis, Hermopolis, and Thebes as Egypt's 4 theological schools, whereas they consider periodic or regional religious beliefs as cults of much less importance. Throughout the late period's 4 chronological rhythms of the Old, Middle, and New Kingdom, these 4 schools controlled the 4 temple centers for long periods, but other religious pantheons gained equal importance, affecting Egypt's thought and cultural endeavors. These 4 schools have always been in philosophical conflict throughout Egyptian history, if not an actual conflict. Hermopolis was considered the spiritual center of Egypt, and the Neteru of its cosmogony was a universal theme in architecture and art. Hermopolis's cosmogony predominated the oldest records known in Egyptology as the Archaic period, 3100 to 2700 BCE. The Old Kingdom, 2700 to 2180 BCE, saw the cosmogony of Memphis and Heliopolis overlap. These unique cosmogonies were reflected in the religious texts of the time. But Thebes gained political and religious power over the first intermediate period, 2040 to 1780 BCE.
Hi, I'm Michael McPherson, and this week on the Egyptian Origins podcast, Tom is delving deep into esoteric and mystery traditions of ancient Egypt. Even in ancient times, the Greek mystery tradition originated in Egypt, but the specific characteristics of their system did not follow that of Egypt. The Greek schools distinguished 3 levels of spiritual participation. The pneumatikoi were true initiates into the temple mysteries, having reached a stage of enlightenment and awakening to the temple's tradition. At the middle level, the psychikoi were students of the temple, learning the various technologies of the tradition. The hylikoi were the masses at the lowest level, not obligated to any spiritual discipline and least developed in terms of paranormal skills and abilities.
Regardless of these changes, each school continued to benefit from royal and secular support. During the formative years of Egyptian civilization, each cosmogony was present. Students from many regions and segments of society attended the houses of life, and royals regularly donated endowments for the temple's maintenance and activities. These circumstances suggest a theological harmony, suggesting that a group of religious centers must have been cohesive despite their distinctive teachings and practices. Regardless of time or place in popularity, each creation myth was integral to the Egyptians' worldview. We thus observe that specific religious themes and images did not vanish despite the separation of these doctrines. In reality, their abilities became more distinct over time, and their functions rounded out a more comprehensive picture. This apparent conundrum is solved by symbolism. The teachings of these schools, according to Delubis, were not merely creation myths, but an esoteric code of cultural development taught by the temple elite. It represents the cycles or resonances of the civilization itself, whose characteristics can be seen in the art, architecture, and literature that have come to prominence at various times. In his words, the temple teachers saw the scheme as a living, vital system that could predict and direct the spiritual process of any moment throughout Egyptian history and people's experiences. Ultimately, the divine mandate of Egypt could be revealed through the teachings of each school, along with the cult practices of each school. An analysis of the creation schemes themselves can reveal what this mandate comprised. The view appraises Egypt's 4 theological schools metaphorically. Each site was both a vessel for and the embodiment of the essence and powers of the Neteru. Consequently, the 4 sacred cities became the geodetic equivalents of the 4 spiritual worlds of creation that gave Egypt its life. The ancient Egyptian civilization was viewed similarly as a process of creation through successive conquests of the Hermopolitan, Memphite, Heliopolitan, and Theban spiritual schools as the universe came into being. It is impossible to reduce these 4 traditions to theological disputes about creation in this way. Their historical relevance is that they represent 4 paradigms of cultural progression, and metaphysics explains how 4 simultaneous and synchronous life streams, or worlds, sustain and support life, from the smallest to the most remarkable phenomena in rhythms or phases. It is possible to view the enigmatic creation law and accompanying fantastic figures as rhythms or resonances that describe the stages of human development in several dimensions. Taking the multidimensional picture of Egypt's cosmology to another level, this symbolic spiritual development can be interpreted as a blueprint for personal and cultural transformation. Throughout many Egyptian religious texts, it is clearly stated that the beginning gradually enters the 4 worlds of creation and transforms into the matter in which they are made. The Egyptian view of creation is a pattern of episodes that occur synchronously, not as linear events, but as interlinked events that affect individual life and life streams. According to many ancient traditions, creation occurs in phases such as fire, earth, air, and water. The emergence of Neteru symbolizes the energy dynamic of a particular phase of creation. The Greek philosopher Philolaus, 5th century BCE, strongly influenced by the wisdom of Egypt, hypothesized that 4 worlds or spheres make up the universe. Olympus, the world of fixed stars, Cosmos, the planets and luminaries, and Antichon, anti-Earth. As well as deformation, the 5 cosmic energies with their associated geometric shapes, he also defiled 5 geometric figures associated with them. Earth, a cube or hexagon, fire, a tetrahedron, air, an icosahedron, water, an octahedron, and ether, a dodecahedron. In his later writings, the Egyptian philosopher Plotinus described reality as having 4 facets. The first cause, the intelligence, the soul, and nature. There are also 4 worlds in Kabbalistic cosmology: emanation, creation, formation, and action. Based on the paradigms of these philosophies, we will explore the 4 themes that make up the cosmology of ancient Egypt. Water, the primal creation, Manu. There are 4 worlds in the Egyptian universe, and they are interconnected through time and space. Time and space first emerge from the universe of Manu, horizon of waters. In this realm, many forms of life spring from the watery mass. Although this primordial water is full of potential, its meaning is unclear. Several possibilities are articulated but not manifested. In the sacred literature of Egypt, references to the blessed land of Manu are often found as the heavenly resting place of the Neteru. A watery swamp is depicted here as the primeval marsh from which all life originated, individual and collective. A cosmic power enters the cyclic state of quiescence at the end of an age. At temples, this is often the image of the entrance to the sacred precincts. Diverse places, such as the temple compound of Joja at Saqqara, Old Kingdom, and the magnificent temple at Amun at Karnak, Middle Kingdom, exemplify an ageless view that all life arose from a cosmic sea by mounting columns resembling aquatic plants. The land of Manu is revealed at individual tombs of the Old Kingdom in swamp scenes, depicting the deceased as an integral part of the creation and fused with the powers inherent to its realm. The motion, reaction, and fission of energy that precedes the formation of matter in the universe is Manu. The creation begins with the cosmogony of Hermopolis. These Neteru depict the principles of water genesis that are analogous to the transformations occurring during the first trimester of human pregnancy. Cosmogenesis, fire, of Akhurt. Neteru inhabits the world of Akhurt, luminous horizon. All physic forms are comprised of them, maintaining their cosmic nature and eventually returning to their celestial origin. They impart life into the primeval waters by emanating fire or light. This second rhythm of creation is embodied in the Memphis cosmogony by the fire aspect. Through the fire phase, individual spirits are brought to the water's surface. Stars and luminaries are other celestial bodies that come into existence. The fetus heartbeat represents the beginning of life in human terms, representing the metaphysical start of incarnation. Anthropogenesis, Earth, by Rousseau. The Neteru, a part of the Rostau, horizon of spirits, are associated with the terrestrial realm and maintain an organic protocol for Earth. During this creation phase, life takes on the physical form when prototypical pairs mate, creating earthly life. In the Heliopolis cosmogony, Earth represents the third rhythm of creation, symbolized by the mound on which the sun rested at the beginning of earthly history. The sacred fire is contained in the matter, and it gains a physical form. Rostau represents the period of human development during which the four essential organs of the fetus develop, allowing them to survive independently. The four elements symbolized by the funerary canopic jars are the lungs, intestines, the liver, and the stomach. Ament, evolution, Ero. Families of Neteru live in Ament, horizon of the west, which contains all three parallel worlds. The lunar phases and the Nile's flooding originate near Ament, such as periodic and cyclic functions. Thebes cosmology represents the final rhythm of creation, which is the aspect of air. It coincides with the current state of the universe. All living forms take part in the Neteru's cyclical and spontaneous processes in this world. This phase refers to emerging from the womb and the transitional experiences that make up our life cycles, including death. It represents a magical transformative force that interacts in the realm of appearances and regulates transitory existence. Ament also provides the capability of elevating matter back to its original spirit, fire. A physical mutation in this world also allows for conscious movement between several planes of existence, allowing us to move from one plane to another. All living beings take part in the cycle of return. The word Ament in ancient Egyptian symbolizes the right hand and the west when looking south. Amenti, one of the Neter names that represent those who have passed on, is sometimes given to Asar in his form as the lifeless god. Burials in Egypt took place only on the west bank of the Nile, and Amenti is one of the name of the Neter. This location offers a sublime existence, a heaven where the afterlife parallels human life. Amentiu is often used in funerary literature to refer to those who have passed into the Western world, and Amentet is the shadow world of Ament. Many of its halls, chambers, and geographical strata resemble sacred sites on Earth as if they were mirror images. Introducing the 10 cosmic families. This hierarchy was not established by the Egyptian sages, perhaps because it would have revealed certain secrets about natural forces, secrets of great danger, as recent scientific discoveries have revealed. Scholars have divided our knowledge of Egypt into different categories, and this approach makes it impossible to comprehend the ancient repertoire of divine images. Diversity is celebrated, along with permutations of the original. The spiritual activities and symbols of each Neter may overlap with those of another, and its functions may intersect in time, seasons, and space, geographic and cosmic, with those of another. Neters are shown in association with others or as family members working on several levels of manifestation simultaneously. This is the protocol rather than a delineation. Symbolists define the four worlds of cosmology as spheres of action expressed by the Egyptian gods that are uniquely Egyptian. They comprise 10 families of Neteru, each representing an archetype or, according to psychologist Carl Gustav Jung, a mythological motif. In analyzing the vast reservoir of ancient Egyptian religious images, distinctions have been made regarding religions, folk customs, prenatal and postmortal functions governed, and the chronological appearances of the Neteru. In ancient Egypt, the number 10 represented delimiting, and a basis for measurement, our mathematical system derives from this scheme. In hieroglyphics, numbers were decimals, displayed as multiples of 10 and single units for tenth parts. Nature and human life have essential cycles of 10, 30, 60, and 110. Units or measures indicate the manifestation or existence of a temporal principle. An overview of Manu's world. Delubis referred to the first creation phase as that which is heaven, describing this world. From this region's Neteru, all expressions of life arrive as potential expressions of causal powers. Their origin lies far beneath the experience of humanity. A fundamental archetype of the homopolitan Ogdoad is formation, exemplified by life emerging from the swamp in which reptilian forms abound. Nun, the active and central source of Genesis, is the original water of creation. Naunet is his consort, the raw material of creation. A teeming population of frogs is depicted in this family, including Hu and Hawet. They symbolize the cosmic expansion and contraction principles that drive the life force. Kuk and Kauket are the cosmic serpents representing consciousness and unconsciousness, respectively. As the originator of the vibration of life, Jehudi transmits the creative acts of his predecessors throughout the universe through his expression of the divine word. He causes the primal elements to resonate in their frequencies. Mat originates all order, comprising matrices or terms that resonate with all life. The solar triad, composed of Ra, Khepri, and Sopde, is also associated with the world of Manu. The archaic imagery representing this trinity appears in the enigmatic inscriptions found on the pyramids of ancient Egypt. They express the archetype of movement by impelling the cyclic rhythms of the sun, planets, and stars. As a symbol for the activities of the solar triad, the boat refers to the region of watery, primordial existence from which they emerge to give birth to light. To the Egyptians, Ra, the original light, sustained the life force, Khepri, the life force in motion, transforming, and Sopde, the Egyptian name of the star we know as Sirius, was the origin and the destination of the live streams in the universe. Its symbolism represents many Egyptian metaphors of fire rising out of the water, a theme repeated in nearly all the significant cosmologies and each of the individual families of Neteru. In the world of Akot, this word refers to what Delubits called the intermediate world. The Neteru of this region acts between abstract above and concrete below powers. Two cosmic families of this region represent independent triads of creative action. In articulating three of nature's principal elemental forces, the Memphite triad expresses the archetype of articulation. Sekhmet, the hidden consort of Ra, manifests the function of light, first manifested by Manu in his first phase. The lioness symbolizes her as a protector. She is represented by Bastet the cat. Ptah is the matrix through which the creative fire flows. His mission is to transform impulse and idea into form, and he is the Neter who serves artisans, metalworkers, and builders. Nefertum is the child of this union, the son of the first lotus of the primeval waters. Neter emits the divine scent of inspiration, the pulse that propels life into sacred regions. By implanting the three principal vital energies into the physical sphere, the Esna triad expresses the archetype of construction. As the divine potter, Khnum represents the earth element through the creation of the Ka, double, of human beings. In her role as the sustainer of species, Neit, his consort, and often called the warrior goddess, channels the energy of fire into the physical body. Her legendary temples treated illness as weaver of forms. In antiquity, this Neter represents the dream and vision states, which are intimately bound up with the realm of the intermediate world. The figure of Heka emerges from a lotus, which represents the watery region of the collective unconscious to which we all belong. In the world of Rostau, there are many grades in this world of that which is on earth, referring to the concrete or terrestrial world. This includes prenatal and postmortal states, the two duats earth and earth's shadow, and active existence. The Neteru of the Heliopolitan Ennead inhabits these regions. They represent the archetype of augmentation because their actions encompass all the worlds of terrestrial life. The totality, two celestial and two earthly pairs emerge from Atum, the totality. According to Shu and Tefnut, the physical universe's air and water are cosmic wind and moisture, respectively. The cosmic matter and fire, represented by Geb and Nut, embody the earth and sky, respectively. Asar, the firstborn child, is a prototypical man. Neter and Oset are the focal points of life, descended from the upper worlds and ascending from the lower worlds. In nature, Asar and Oset embody the latent powers within human life, renewal and fruition. Nebthet and Set represent the two powers of the material world that ensure physical life continues after it has become apparent. Secretion and fixation. These are the material manifestations of the abstract cosmic principles of expansion, Hu, and contraction, Hawet, in the higher world of Manu. As part of the Rostau world, the Dendera triad represents proliferation. Ascribed to Hether in this realm is the earth element. Human embodiment is created by the Neter, who returns it to elemental existence at the end. The younger Heru embodies the fire aspect, taking on the hawk's image, a creation of earth and sky. A lotus-like creature emerges from the water with a finger to his lips, the Neter Aihi. Unlike the other lotus-born, his ability to walk among men represents the creative power accessed in all procreative acts. At every rite of the dead, and in several rituals in Egypt's magical repertoires, the funerary quaternary represents the archetype of sublimation. In ancient times, the elements were invoked in various ways, from divination to sorcery, and they are necessary for invocation or dispersal of the four elements, fire, earth, air, and water. The four guardians of the compass directions, Imset, Dalmutuf, Hapi, and Quebsinuf, live in the principal organs of the human form, liver, stomach, lungs, and intestines. A world of Ament. The live streams are destined for this world. In this world of shadow, the sacred drama is performed according to the periodic functions of the universe. Because of Amun, the Theban triad expresses the archetype of differentiation. In Rostau's parallel world, Neter represents innate consciousness, a descendant of Atum's unified substance. His consort Mut ensures the transmission of innate consciousness from one world to the next through incubation and protection. In Egyptian mythology, Khoens the runner represents the lunar phases since he runs over the sky. He represents innate consciousness and all the functions that allow divine principles to appear on earth. The initiatory triad includes the three Neteru depicted consistently together and in high ceremonial acts of transformation. In mystic rites, their interaction produces rejuvenation, and together they express the archetype of domination and mastery of material life by the spirit. Various post-funeral rites and high temple rituals depict Elder Heru with a hawk head, in company with Anpu with a jackal head, both otherwise human figures. The Neter of latent existence is usually depicted as a lifeless Sokar. Sokar is a ceremonial role, usually played by the Start, or a royal person. In this context, Heru represents the principle of spiritual ascension, whereas Anpu represents the transmutation of physical forces during proper spiritual initiation. All things living possess Sokar, a latent spiritual principle encased in matter's deepest regions, waiting to awaken. It is named after the three principal Neteru, who govern the cyclic functions of nature and express the archetype of separation. As an androgynous being, both father and mother in nature, Hapi symbolizes the Nile as it rises and falls throughout the seasons. Taut is the process of cellular replication that generates living forms. Apep represents the natural repetition of the life cycle reincarnation to which every soul is subjected in the world of the inner life. They express the archetypal nature of cosmic action. The divine alchemy gives life to the world, sustains it, and regenerates it in divine cycles. Egypt's esoteric philosophy comprises 42 natural principles divided into 10 families. Symbolism of numbers. The number has universal implications for the Greek Pythagoreans, and ancient Egypt recognized and employed this symbolism of number, not abstractly, but through obvious visible means. In mythology and symbolism, specific numbers are associated with the activities of the Neteru in their temple architecture. Modern scholars seem troubled by the knotty question of whether Egyptians believed in monotheism or polytheism. It is conceivable that the Egyptians were of both persuasions, but their worldview was thoroughly polytheistic, and that their philosophy refused to be dominated by a single deity. As a group and in association with other divine principles, the Neteru were in a perpetual state of flux. Even though the four great cosmogonies are rooted in one universal causal principle, the deities have a separate family of deities that takes precedence over everything religious and cultural. In Pythagorean thought, unity is expressed by the monad. A monad represents the condition of the life force at the beginning of time in Egyptian cosmology. There is no expression of creation. All potential exists in the monad. used to incubate possibilities before they manifest. The duad represents division and polarization in number symbolism, or opposition. The duad denotes paired functions in Egyptian cosmology, such as male and female, active and passive, heavenly and earthly. In Egypt, the duad represents complementary forces rather than antagonistic ones. It also implies that principles should be unified. Egyptian iconography frequently depicts the triad. The duad is the culmination of the process arising from the monad and synthesizing related powers. As in a family, the triad also represents energy exchange within a creative expression. Both celestial and terrestrial worlds are characterized by the quaternary, which refers to the materialization of certain powers. As an example, the four winds represent the continuance of natural forces. As in the activity of the four rudders of heaven, this number is also associated with the principle of sustaining and protecting. Ogdoads, 8 families, are related to quaternaries, families of 4 or 2 quaternaries. The Ogdad is a mirror image of heaven and earth, representing 4 dimensions of natural life. The pharaonic role is associated with the number 5. Each of the 5 titles and crowns was given to the royal person, represented an essential part of the kingship's responsibility to maintain order, unity, and continuity between the physical and spiritual realms. These 5 niches or chambers were used in pharaonic monuments as commemorative statues or ritual monuments to sustain the divine ruler's 5-fold functions. At the sites and in the temples and tombs, 5 files or priestly shifts maintained the sacred schedule of ceremonies. The Sepentenary symbol represents the Neteru's ability to transform to humans their powers. This is seen in Het-Her's images, which have 7 forms. In Khnum's activities as he sculpts 7 forms of the Ka for Pharaoh, and in the 7 funerary envelopes in the tomb, 3 coffins and 3 shrines, which make up the House of Eternity. Several organic cycles are associated with 7, such as the phases of the moon that are formed by 4 days of the week. A novena is also associated with the 7 to the 14-day funerary cycle of offering and petitioning to the dead, a precursor to the Christian novenas of later times. The Pythagorean theory holds that all rhythms can be reduced to 9 roots in ancient Greek initiatory practices learned in Egypt. Pharaoh was the divine guardian of the known world as the ruler of the 9 bows regions. In Egyptian writing, the number 9 was often used to represent many or myriads. It represents a cosmic family or principal expression when it manifests as the Ennead or company of 9. There are several significant numbers in the Egyptian pantheon, including 10, which have already been discussed as a principle that represents time and space. In Egyptian cosmology, the number 22 plays an essential role because of the expression of 10 and 12. Furthermore, the function of 12 is based on the triad and quaternary, 3 times 4, representing a cyclic manifestation of power. 22 is reflected artistically and architecturally at several sacred sites, representing Lower Egypt's 22 original nomes, 2 or provinces. Also represented in the figures in the major arcana of the tarot are 12 constellations of the zodiac, 10 planets, and the number of encephalographic nodes in the human brain. Thus, this number signifies a complete cycle of manifestation, both energetic and material. In Egyptian symbolism, 24 and 28 also refer to organic phenomena and the process of reinvention at a sacred precinct. Asar, the archetypal figure of rebirth, is represented by 24 rows of pillars in temple halls. 7 cervical vertebrae represent the 7 ancient planets. 12 thoracic vertebrae represent the 12 signs of the zodiac, and 5 lumbar vertebrae represent the 5 elements of nature. In ancient times, the Egyptians regarded the division of the day as a procession of 24 deities heralding each hour, which is closely related to the number 24. A lunar month is directly associated with Asar, worshipped on the lunar calendar's 28th day. There are 36 decans. The Egyptian religion differs from all others because it is orientated toward the sky rather than the earth. Besides hieroglyphics, sacred astronomy and the zodiac played an essential role in spiritual and practical matters in sacred science. As in Greek and Roman mythology, our era is distinguished by 12 constellations of stars. During their revolving around the sun, the planets inscribe a course over the zodiac, also called the ecliptic in astronomy. According to the Egyptians, there were 36 sectors known by the Greeks as decanoi, singular decan, a tenth, or unit of 10. The images were meticulously annotated in temples and tombs as a religious timekeeping system, still highly accurate and efficient. Tarot images represent the archetypal forces in human life and are attributed to a Hermetic origin. The 36 Decan gods and 42 Neteru account for 78 sacred principles associated with the traditional tarot deck. Originally intended to be used as a system of spiritual instruction, a cult legend says the cards were made into playing cards because of man's proclivity for a gambling guarantee for its survival. Neteru, the 42. Egypt's cosmology is always framed by 42 principles, regardless of the time or place. The 42 symbolizes cosmic truth, divine life, and natural harmony in art and literature. There are 42 sacred districts in the two lands, 20 in Upper Egypt and 20 in Lower Egypt. These were considered the navels of the land. Local nature spirits were associated with heavenly counterparts, one of the 42 Neteru. Ancient thinking and cultures of the highest aesthetic identify the land with spiritual principles. The physical world expressed sacred life to the Egyptians and was not taken for granted. This high regard for the omnipotent Nile, the source of life for the land, is reflected in a hymn dedicated to him. Papyrus Salier II, Hymn to Hapi, is the universal Lord who sustains both shores. The mighty Neteru in his cavern, whose name is unknown to those below, is offered to all the Neteru that Hapi has provided. Respect all the creations of Hapi with awe, you who extol the greatness of the Neteru. Throughout time, the names of the Neteru and their associated gnome spirits are interchanged, and older families are restructured with additional associations, sometimes due to what Egyptologists call absorption or conquest. This phenomenon is probably because of the Neteru as they became more specific through time, rather than losing their qualities as they strengthened. The negative confession is articulated as a declaration of realistic behavior preceded by 42 declarations, I have not. In a moral sense, it represents all the possibilities that human behavior may take. The start recited this in the presence of 42 Mati, assessors of truth and functionaries of Netta, of ordered, correct existence, Mat. The Neteru expressed all possibilities embodied in human life for the Egyptians. Philosophers such as Joseph Campbell have articulated this view. The ancient civilization's cosmic principles were more accurate representations of archetypal forces within the human psyche or potential living in the soul. Additionally, the Neteru of Egypt symbolizes the resultant use of spiritual energies. They assert certain physiological functions can be improved when one works consciously with their power. 7 aspects of the Egyptian experience are reflected in the 42 Neteru principles: the sacred geography of Egypt, the gnomes, the 42 assessors of truth, ethics, and the 42 divine images, human powers, to name a few. Mammalian gestation periods follow the lunar-related 7 cycles. 2 times 7 equals 42. In the sacred astronomy, 42 represents the ratio of the sun's distance to Saturn, the final organic power. An ancient Egyptian practice assigned numerical proportions and associated qualities to each known planet. We have the expression of spirit and consciousness as the sun, which represents unity or the number 1 in sacred astronomy. Our solar function is expressed by the planets radiating from the sun. The next planet from the sun is Mercury, representing mentality, or the number 7. Venus embodies the principle of association, or the number 14. Emotion, or 21, is governed by the Earth-Moon system. Action, or 28, is represented by Mars. Saturn, the number 42, represents a cycle of manifestation and completion, while Jupiter represents growth and 35. The symbols of the Neteru. In the same way, their numerical attributions express basic concepts about the variant rhythms or vibrations of the cosmic manifestation. The Neteru symbols are neither associated with accident nor design. Even when stylized, the characteristics of the Netta are always consistent, whatever period and however stylized they may be. In the statues and detailed reliefs of the male and female Neteru, you will find a wide variety of regional crowns, feathers, horned figures, and plant life. Among the many constants found in temple and tomb art, the Neteru's headgear is one. As the Neteru personifies psychological functions, its prominent association with cerebral activity is fascinating. Some suggest that the symbolism of the crown or diadem represents the replacement of ordinary cerebral activity with spiritual activity. Its headgear specifies its creative power and potential to elevate neuropsychological functions. Its crown is a consistent representation of the Netter's principle. Scepters are shown in ceremonial reliefs given to the Netter in exchange for or in offering spiritual empowerment. Depending on the context of Neteru, the wands or scepters of the Neteru may represent a specific action that affects the recipient. Hundreds of vignettes at the Abydos temple depict Seti I in the presence of the Neteru, with different ornamentations in each scene. The Netter's scepter or wand explains much about the manifestation of its power on earth, the extension of its principle to the physical realms at the temple or tomb. The principle is intended for human use in the reliefs found at these places and is placed in the hands of royal, started, or deceased individuals, who are then provided direct access to the Netter's power. The ankh pointing toward or placed on the Netter is the most obvious example. These examples have two distinct meanings. By pointing the wand toward the person, you are metaphorically infusing life or the specific power represented by the Netter. The wand was placed over the head, denoting the awakening of the Netter's principle from within. Besides the historical connotations and regional design of clothing, clothing also possesses a deep symbolism. As a symbol of latent or hibernating conditions buried deep within the layers or recesses of the physical form, the swathed body is highly symbolic. These are the most common depictions of Sokar, Asar, and Ptah. Neteru is sometimes depicted as seated or throned as another symbol of their function, within the sacred scene where they are found. Here, the Netter on the throne presides over the environment, controlling the other principles present. Worship of animals. According to Herodotus, in no other land of the ancient world was there such a profusion of animal worship as Egypt. The modern prejudice that ancient people lacked a fundamental understanding of nature and natural forces reinforces the impression that this activity comprised most of Egypt's religious activity. The material form of power describes only its effect on the physical world in symbolistic thinking. The power in subtler worlds is much less limited and much more accessible. It expresses both principle and function in physical activity as observed in nature. Consequently, Netters can take on animal forms. Symbolists propose that certain animal species exhibit an exceptional proliferation of sacred functions. To a human observer, this illustrates how the senses may attain superhuman, exalted levels, where the Neteru exists in pure form, not animal. Because of their highly developed olfactory lobes, reptilian life is characterized by a strong focus on smell. There is a connection to earth phenomena because reptiles are land creatures. The exaltation of the sense of smell is essential to achieving mastery in the earth plane, according to Hermetics. In Egypt, the process for achieving this was known as scent alchemy, which is today known as aromatherapy. Here are some other correlations. Egypt's preeminence of cats in iconography is because of the animal's superiority, which is confirmed by modern science. Its brain structure is the same as that of a human being, and its 9 lives in popular modern superstition correspond to the 9 neurofunctions observed by feline researchers: smell, taste, touch, temperature, balance, sight, hearing, direction, and time. Cats possess latent psychic abilities, and these senses which make up their legendary psychic nature. In reality, the Neteru represents a vast array of latent human abilities associated with physical senses that function as communication bridges with supra-corporeal realms. In studying Egyptian metaphysical beliefs, we should resist the temptation to assume they implied personal physical evolution. As far as their mystical system is understood, the development of higher levels of acuity followed specific spiritual endeavors was not part of it. Modern metaphysics, which maintains that these practices resulted in a superior state of matter, patronizes Darwinian thinking entirely. Egypt is not familiar with the concept of evolution, contrary to popular belief. Sacred science instead articulated the awakening of pre-existing powers already present in human life, which are merely latent in expression. During the process, physical qualities were transformed so that the awakening could occur naturally. Primordial Ogdoad. The cosmogony birth of the macrocosm is represented by the appearance of prototypical fire, earth, air, and water in the first phase of creation. In the mythos of Hermopolis, primordial existence is derived from Nun, who coexists with his counterpart, Naunet. Nun is represented by cosmic water, while Naunet is represented by cosmic fiber or substance. The Egyptians believed that all subsequent activity in life arose from the pair. This god represents the principle of Genesis, responsible for the universe's lifelike motion. The principle of substance is Naunet, which functions in the universe as matter. Then new energetic principles come into play using the metaphorical images of reptilian life. They depict features of cosmic consciousness and their eventual grafting onto the human form. The Isle of Flame emerged from the waters of Nun and the substance of Naunet. Part was the first matter produced from this mass. In infinite space, two frogs were created, Hu and Hawet. They represent the proliferation of water and substance through rhythmic movement. The pair function as space and time in the natural world, respectively. Hu represents the principle of extension, Hawet the principle of contraction. The cosmic serpent is a representation found in nearly every religion's cosmology. In Egyptian tradition, the pair of serpents in the primeval Ogdoad symbolizes the cosmos's active and passive expressions of energy and matter. Khauket is the function of light, and Kuk is the function of darkness. Kuk represents the principle of quiescence, or hibernation of vital activity manifested as darkness in the cosmogonies. When exposed to light, Khauket represents the principle of mutation, manifesting as the reawakening of quiescent matter. In pharaonic iconography, the synthesis of these two powerful forces is often depicted. Cobras are placed on the crown of the exalted monarch, who symbolically possesses mastery over both cosmic functions. Kukut is the cosmic counterpart of Wadjet, the archaic cobra of Amperhu, the 19th pharaoh of Lower Egypt. Initially, she defended the royal house of Egypt. The Neter Jehuti and his consort Mart are manifestations in the cosmogony. Unlike the rest of their family in the Hermopolitan Ogdoad, these Neteru are not depicted in primeval images. Rarely did they appear in human form, but embodied themselves often in reptilian forms. This pair has frequently collaborated with humans throughout Egyptian history, facilitating construction projects and the distribution of knowledge at temple centers. Known as the progenitor of vibration and sound, Jehuti represents the final synthesis between energy and matter, and Mart represents the law of natural order. Using his words, he creates the rhythm of life. Among all forms of life, including animal life, plant life, and mineral life, Mart's physical patterns embody the rhythm of each form. Following the canons of the sacred science, she dispenses the exalted matrices of form such as art, architecture, geometry, and celestial asterisms. The Peru Neteru, the houses of the Neteru, is harmonious, symmetrical, and has ideal proportions because of these cosmic templates. In certain mystery school initiation scenes recorded by Lambilicus in the 4th century of our era, modifications to the human physical pattern are described. In the Greco-Roman initiation scene, Jehuti and Mart are frequently depicted with the scribe's palette and reed pen. In the occult tradition, these symbols represent the original world of creation, recorded in the universal memory, the Akashic record. Jehuti's function as communication and Mart's structure represents their guardianship of civilization and learning. As opposed to the hindbrain and midbrain, which embody earlier stages in cosmogenesis, the cerebral cortex symbolizes the conscious functions of the brain. It is often depicted as the beak of an ibis bird, protruding from the frontal region of the head. At the fissure between the lateral lobes of the brain, the crown of Mart comprises a single feather. She combines intellect and intuition, linear and circular perception in this sense. The zodiacal sign Cetus, the whale, which lies between the Taurus and Gemini constellations, is associated with Seshat, the Neter who guides mortal construction and is sometimes called Djuti's consort. In the physical sphere, inorganic forms, such as those created by man, are governed by Seshat, Ma'at's image. Her omission of sacred measures that inaugurated the gods' houses, Peru Neteru, applies to all critical temple centers in Egypt. Her scepter defines a temple site, an Egyptian sacred cubit configured as a measuring rod. A stele depicting her assures posterity that the holy canon has been followed, and therefore the ancient tradition has been preserved. In this way, the Neteru can fulfill their energetic function on earth. These Neteru perform three subsidiary functions in Egyptian architecture: geometry, Jehuti, volume, Ma'at, and number, Seshat. Taoist philosophy compares the 8 phases of creation depicted in the Hermopolitan Ogdoad to the 8 musical octaves and the 8 trigrams of energetic activity. In the creation myth of Hermopolis, the 8 phases correspond to the 8 elements of chemistry: alkalis, nitrogens, alkalines, oxygens, borons, halogens, carbons, and noble gases. There are 4 prototypical fire pairs: Hu and Hauhet, earth pairs, Kuk and Kauket, air pairs, Jehuti and Ma'at, and water pairs, Nun and Naunet. The triad of the sun. The Neteru of the solar triad represents 3 phases of cosmic activity. Every family member is represented by a boat, a metaphor for the fiery spirit traveling through the cosmic ocean. The celestial water, the Sea of Nun, acts as a medium for the manifestation of these principles in vast cycles. Ancient Egypt determined the sacred measures of time and space by the asterism Sirius, symbolized as a celestial boat in the constellation Canis Major. A new cycle began when Sopdet appeared in the heavens in her annual heliacal rising. Neter Sopdet represents the principle of presentience, or foreknowledge. It is believed that the Egyptians saw the star as an initial marker of the heavens and a predestined path to humanity. The Neteru pole stars and planets follow every celestial chart after Sopdet. The pyramid texts, which are among the earliest classics written by the Egyptians, state the royal Ba Sol concludes its cosmic journey by joining forces with Sopdet, fulfilling the purpose of the awakened human by merging with antecedents of its own. Sopdet is the Egyptian measurer and marker through epochs and ages. Each epoch is symbolized by the equinoxes and the changing of the pole stars in the precession of the stars. Sirius is used as a symbol. Sopdet embodies the embryonic sun god or divine light that has not yet manifested itself in the conscious form in humans. So this function is not visible or active in human terms. Sopdet's mutation is known as Khepri. The Scarabaeus saker beetle epitomizes this Neter's theme in Egypt. The actions of this insect were synchronized with the solar principle, as it continuously rolled its eggs in soil toward the rising sun every morning. The sun's life cycle symbolizes the transformations that occur in nature, resulting in quickening the life force on Earth. Khepri's Scarabaeus is like the saker Bedi of cyclic return, rolled in its egg by its parent toward the sun while incubating. It emerges as an ethereal winged creature after the chrysalis stage. This represents the acacia tree trunk that was used to conceal the body of Asa after it was thrown into the Nile. This pillar is compared to Neter's 4 regions of his spinal column after Set dismembered it: the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. The vertebra provided stability, strength, endurance, and permanence. The eyes of the Heru were worn together by a select few. The right eye depicted the sun, and the left eye represented the moon. During the epic myth of Heru's battle with Set, Heru lost his left eye, which was restored by Jehuti, Lord of the Moon. A solar eclipse, which Set is thought to cause, is referred to in the legend. Instruments made by Hether. She uses 3 rhythmic instruments to awaken the solar and lunar principles at her temple: the crotalum, the sistrum, and the menetal. This instrument was thought to have healing properties. The sounds emanating from her instruments emulate cosmic rhythms of creation and procreation when shaken. Count stars with the crown, a 7-pointed star. The architect and astronomer used the Neter's crown, and the scepter is a sacred measuring instrument. Symbolizing her power to enumerate, her palm-frond scepter stands for countless years or eternity. Ancient Egyptian serpent imagery took on several meanings, which can be reduced to either the function or a guardian spirit or an evil force. As the procreative force of Pharaoh, Amum embodied the horned viper, while the cobra, Wadjet, represented the divine female who safeguarded the crown and ensured its perpetuity. Serpents were also attributed to reproductive powers, especially cosmic. The knot or buckle of Auset represents the womb of this neter, which incubates the latent seed of Heru-Ur. An amulet represents the menses, which could rejuvenate the life force. The weaving shuttle and shield bearing crossed arrows are associated with Neit by the power expressed in her name Netet, to weave and draw together. She was also viewed as a goddess, possessing both genders, having come into being through parthenogenic power. Two archaic goddesses who protected and gave the royal crowns were Nekhebet and Wadjet. Lower Egypt's Wadjet represents the vulture, and Upper Egypt's Nekhebet represents the cobra. Neteru, the forces of Pharaoh's double crown, are collectively known as the Nebti. Atum's first couple, Shu and Tefut, brought air and moisture into the cosmic landscape. As mated lions, the pair represented the continuous passage of time as they guarded the horizons of yesterday and tomorrow. The neter was also considered a powerful transformative aspect of light in Egypt, like an insect's chrysalis transforming from larva to winged beetle. Khepri is both earth and water, as he is associated with cosmic, remote life, Nun, as well as daily life, Ra, and with the rhythms of the Nile, water, and sun, fire. The principle of metamorphosis, which can be represented as a revolving light or a revolution in nature, is represented by Khepri. Additionally, he ensures the deceased will awaken to the afterlife, as evidenced by archaeologists' myriad of funerary scarabs. In Egypt, Ra, the neter of the sun, travelled each day in a sailboat from east to west. On the Martet, the sun rises at noon. Ra loses light as the sun descends toward the western horizon in his Sektet boat. In another ancient myth of the primeval sun, the sacred fire Ra is expelled from the bottomless abyss, Nun, after which Ra copulates with himself, and the Neteru is born from him. In the solar triad, he is the creator, possessing aspects of Khepri and being regarded as the source of terrestrial Neteru. The following hymn to Ra is translated today. Ra, Lord of Truth, whose shrine is hidden, hail you. You are in a boat with the god Khepri, and the Neteru is under your control. Thy word created the Neteru. Rotation represents the principle of circulation of light. This activity sets the diurnal cycle, and Peru Neteru's architecture receives the house's cosmic light at strategic times during the solar day. We can divide the solar function of rotation into 4 parts. Based on the angular position of the sun concerning the horizons, periods were determined. Whether they followed the ritual of solar devotions or the rhythms of other Neteru, ancient Egyptian priesthoods observed a protocol of worship that divided the day into 4 sacred periods. The Neteru was further governed by Ra, Atum, Heru, Khepri, a composite image representing all manifestations of light occurring in its diurnal cycle. Light's 4 diurnal phases. Khepri, the reborn light at sunrise, from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m., beginning at sunrise. During this time, the sun rises in the east. Every day, Nut's womb, the sky, emerges in the physical world. Metamorphosis is governed by Khepri, the principle of metamorphosis. From 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., noon to sunset. During this time, the sun ascends to its highest point in the sky and begins its descent to the west. It is the midday of Heru, the ascension light. Heru, the principle of ascension, rules. Sunset, Ra, the radiant light, from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. After sunset until midnight. When the sun set was when the Egyptians ended the day, as it was the time when the light died. It was represented by the light entering the mouth of Nut in its return to the sacred, hidden regions. Ra is the principle of circulation. Atum, the unified light at midnight, from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., nighttime to dawn. In funerary texts, the period of the sun's disappearance was portrayed as the journey of light through the deepest regions of the universe, fighting the evil forces of darkness to be reborn in the next period, governed by the principle of unity, Atum. During the creation phase, represented by the Ogdoad of Hermopolis, energy and matter are created. Next, the physical universe takes shape, as symbolized by the solar triad. Rotation, revolution, and precession are the three qualities of cosmic motion manifested respectively through Ra, Khepri, and Sobdet. The intelligent spirit enters the material world through the creative triad of Memphis activity. Memphis, the creative triangle. Egyptologists have decoded the primary source of Memphite mythology using a stele from Dynasty 25 known as the Shabaka stone. As an important religious document, the ancient sacred drama depicted on the stone originated much earlier than Pharaoh Shabaka. In contrast to 20th century historians who state the Shabaka stone represents a fabrication by the Memphite theologians seeking to usurp power from their rival schools. We view this creation myth symbolically as an integral part of Egypt's overall cosmological scheme. In this triad, the creative activity comes from Ptah, who transmits the individual sacred fire, which came into existence with the solar triad as a body. Essentially, he represents the principle of animation, which assures the transference of the life force from its energetic form into the physical mantle. It is thus not just in the cosmic sphere that Ptah is at work, but in the many spheres of the natural world as well, the human, animal, plant, and mineral realms. The function of fabrication is Ptah, embodying inert matter with the genius of function and form. As Ptah's action permeates every level of creation, the Shabaka stone declares this Netta the source of an embodiment for even the gods. His offerings to the Neteru were placed in their shrines. Their sacred precincts were established, and their bodies were made according to their desires. The Neteru's bodies were made of wood, stone, and clay. Everything that emanated from him became a reality. An ancient prototype of the caduceus is the scepter. In metaphysics, the spirit and matter are connected by a Netta force, which ensures their sacramental union. Physical life comprises alternating current, and the scepter represents this. He performs healing, and procreative acts involve transmitting energy to matter. In ancient Greece, Ptah was equated with Hephaestos, Latin Hephaestus, the god of divine fabrication and the protector of the ancient warriors and heroes. Ptah's consort, or complement, is the lioness, a sacred fire descended from the solar triad. Sekhmet is a personification of the destructive aspect of Ra. Her crown is a solar disk, surmounted by a cobra of light and darkness, descending from the Hermopolitan phase of creation. The sun's purifying light removes the dross in the physical matter in order to polarize the creative fire of Ptah. Before matter becomes an incarnation, Sekhmet sanctifies it by this action. Netta is closely associated with Bast, the domestic cat representing Sekhmet. Together, these Neteru symbolize the dual aspect of the solar principle on Earth, the destructive, purifying flame and the nurturing, life-sustaining heat of the sun. Herodotus describes the temple of Bastet as the spirit of the 18th dynasty in Lower Egypt, Kent. They illustrate two of the unique characteristics of the feline kingdom, the light-reflecting lenses in the cat's eyes and the utterly flexible range of motion in its spinal cord. Both are associated with the Kundalini fire of metaphysics rising within the human body. The flint knife of Sekhmet announces death, while Bastet announces the birth chamber with the sound of life. When the sacred fire enters the mundane sphere, Sekhmet represents the principle of purification. In the life cycle of all matter, the purification of matter continues from birth to death. As the patroness of ceremonial magic and healing, Sekhmet performs the function of purgation in the physical world. As protector of the Egyptian army, she handles the defense of the physical land by exiling nefarious forces from its sacred boundaries with her destructive fire. Ptah embodies earth, and Sekhmet embodies fire in this triad, but their union produces Nefertum, a Netta of water. In Buddhism, he is represented as an eternal youth rising from a lotus that rests on the cosmic sea of none. As the principle of precipitation, this enigmatic figure encourages physical life to reach supernatural expression levels. Nefertum is also connected with the solar principle as a descendant of the solar triad. This Netta in ancient times is identified with the king in the ancient pyramid texts. In the nostrils of Ra, Pharaoh Unas appears as Nefertum. Enigmatic utterance, #266. The scent of beauty and intoxication precedes Neteru's initial appearance in several myths. Aside from being the Netta of divine scent, Nefertum also represents the conditions that cultivate inspiration and spiritual elevation. In ancient Egypt, for instance, these states were encouraged through the sacred art of scent alchemy. In temple and tomb rites and theurgic activities, the elevation of the sense of smell formed an integral part of the magic. As a symbol of the soul, the lotus is found in many cultures. Water, earth, and air belong to the object, and it strives to live in the fiery world of spirit. A lotus metaphor was frequently used in ancient Egypt to convey the meaning of earthly existence, as evidenced by thousands of inscriptions at temples and tombs. In the murky silt and water of the Nile, the blue lotus flower flourishes through its deeply embedded roots. Its delicate petals spread upwards into the sky. Despite its foul origins, the flower produces an exquisite appearance and aroma. The lotus symbolizes the deceased's reawakening on the spiritual plane, as depicted in tomb inscriptions. Precipitation occurs when a liquid element is drawn out of a dense element into which it is contained. It is believed that the lotus of Nefertum draws the vital fire of cosmic worlds into the psychic realm and functions as desire in the physical realm. The physical triad of Esna. The spirit has been woven into intelligent form in the creative triad in Memphis. The physical triad embodied at Esna, in Upper Egypt, ensures the continuation of this imprint and its embodiment in the phenomenal world. This family's Neteru is concerned with transmitting the prototypical cosmic pattern through the live stream, through the autonomic functions embedded in physical forms. Neit, the creator, appears to have been the progenitor of this group. As she is the only Netta who is not a reflection of her associate, she is unique, rather than appearing as a passive appendage of her partner. The earth principle marries a fiery principle like Sekhmet. The fire symbolism is associated with the solar principle and blood movement, also associated with catastrophic or cathartic events. Only these deities wear red and have weapons instead of the male Neteru of their worlds. Herodotus described how ancient cultures honored Neit's festival by lighting candles, torches, and lamps. As the result of parthenogenesis or virgin birth, Neit is regarded as a mother divinity and the transmitter of the vital substance descended from the creative triad. Researchers have discovered that mitochondrial DNA, inherited only from the mother, can trace human ancestry back to a single source, a lineage of first humans believed to be of African descent. The goddess may represent this phenomenon. In her iconography in southern regions, where she was regarded as a huntress or harvester of animal food, Neit carries a shield, a bow, and crossed arrows. A Netta's name derives from the Hebrew root meaning to knit or to weave, reflecting her role as the link between the body's vital spiritual and physical functions. It depicts her holding the weaver's shuttle and wearing a red crown of the north, a diadem typical to royal queens, and a symbol of the active substance every mother transmits to children through her blood. Similarly, Neit of the northern region works to renew life by fusing or interfacing divine elements. By doing so, the Netta sustains the body through the principle of fusion. However, when the body's cohesion is disturbed by illness, injury, and disturbance, she functions as healing. Ptah embeds a sophisticated fire into the physical mold of his creator as part of the Memphite triad. The act of inscribing this pattern into the ka of every being, the memory of divine existence, is described as his role as divine potter. Khnum fulfills a similar role in physical life by apportioning the instincts to the body defined by Neit. These will guide innate consciousness as it learns about itself and its origins. Khnum replicates DNA, which gives life to a cell. On the opening page of this chapter, Khnum can be pictured as a ram-headed Netta, representing the instinctive realm of ancient peoples. He was associated with the ram of Mendes as Barneb Tatu, the soul of the pillar, a composite fertility figure. Christians have associated the deity with pagan magic, a remnant from an Egyptian belief that horned figures symbolize the corruption of matter or evil, from which the equation horned being devil was derived. Physical life is associated with the more sublime quality of Khnum, joins. Khnum is shown in several temples, creating 7 cars for the royal person and overseeing the fabrication of the automatic functions available only to descendants of the Neteru. 7 endocrine glands influence human behavior. Survival, adrenal glands. Generation, gonads. Nourishment, spleen. Nurturing, thymus. Conscious development, thyroid. Creativity, pituitary. And aspiration to suprahuman experience, pineal gland. He implants the spiritual essence of life into the first envelope of the physical form, the soul, which Nefertum precipitated. The natural world functions as an embodiment of the principle of distillation. In some late period writings, Sobek, the Neter of the crocodile image, and the Neteru of the Esna triad are often confused. Sometimes they are misunderstood. As the gnome spirit of the region where Khnum was revered, Nat Pehut, he is often named in place of Khnum in the triad. Like Nefertum and Ihai at Dendera, Heka is the child of the divine pair at Esna, whose name means magic or magical words. He is a lotus-born like them, initially emerging from the watery element. The shedding of reptilian skin symbolizes the cyclical renewal by holding twin serpents. Heka was the patron of the legendary Alexandrian high art of transformation, haute magie, practiced by this Neter during the late period. He is endowed with the words of power that can transform all forms endowed with life into living creatures and infuse lifelessness with vitality. Heka carries a feather-shaped scepter that originated from Mart and Jehuti, the mediums of resonance and vibration. It is bound to be a lotus handle from Nefertum, the medium for creative imagination. Heka's preconscious world is represented by symbols representing the emanation of power words. In addition, he functions as a ritual in the physical world he is about to enter. By manipulating their forces, he becomes the principle of transformation. We have now reached the end of becoming an individual. Spirit has become matter because of cosmogenesis, and the divine substance can now manifest all manifestations. The Heliopolitan Ennead becomes the cycle of anthropogenesis, the embodiment of cosmic life on Earth in human form. The solar Ennead, Heliopolis. Heliopolis represents the descent of this conscious substance from the cosmic realm into the physical world. It develops individually based on principles resulting from the pairing or polarization of earthly forces. Heliopolis Great Nine is derived from the pyramid texts. The group comprises Atum, the central creator, followed by the 2 celestial pairs Shu and Tefnut, Jeb and Nut, Asar and Oset, birth Set and Nebthet, the 2 terrestrial pairs. Unlike any other groups of Neteru, Egyptologists are fond of the Heliopolitan Ennead and have given more attention to its mythological components. From the stories and adulation reported by travelers in antiquity, we can glean endless variations on the Assyrian mythos, which was annexed to the Heliopolitan saga. The cosmogony of Heliopolis is often depicted as the creation of the intellectual elite of the northern Egyptian temple schools to hold sway over the primitive theologies of the south. Ancient writers were prejudiced toward Heliopolis because of Asar and Auset. When religious festivals honored Osiris and Isis, favorites of the Greco-Roman elite, they elaborated on the story as much as possible. In the pyramid texts, creation begins at Atum, leaves the cosmic sphere, and culminates in the primeval mound of Earth at Heliopolis. According to the scheme of anthropogenesis, this is the metaphor of the unembodied soul descending to Earth. In all depictions of Atum, he is a fully developed individual, usually accompanied by the other members of his family. The following pairs of pairs to whom he gives birth and sustains the earthly life of soul are viewed as Father, Creator, Originator, and Source of life. Symbolically, Atum is shown as an eel swimming in the waters of Nun, where he originated. He has access to them, becoming the totality as he encompasses all existence manifested in cosmic and mundane realms. In modern times, Atum also has the form of a mongoose, a creature associated with the ferret and weasel families. He slays serpents and crocodile eggs are destroyed, all symbols of Set, the destroyer of souls. Seth is his sacred name in this form. Identified with Ra and Khepri, Atum also possesses a solar function. As the Ka of Heliopolis, Atum is the shadow of these higher entities on Earth, ruling over the midnight to dawn cycle when the light has gone out. He symbolizes the soul's descent into its material form on Earth and the spiritual light it possesses that awaits manifestation during the day, the life cycle. The principle of unity, which manifests in the physical world as consciousness, is embodied in Atum by his fundamental connection with the original light and its destination on Earth. It is said that Atum spits forth, masturbates, or otherwise engenders the Neteru from the Heliopolitan family. He is the source of the first pair who take part in the soul's condensation into the material body. Neteru represents Sekhmet's vital principle as it descends from cosmic regions into the physical form through breath and circulation. The complementary forces of Shu and Tefhut are analogous to those of Hu and Hauhet in the Hermopolitan Ogdoad. Each was represented as a mated lion facing opposite directions, with the hieroglyph Achet horizon between them. After the soul enters the physical form, they ensure its initial development at the microcosmic level. He is known by the name Shu, which represents his realm, the four rudders of heaven. Shu is the embodiment of space and air. The principle of inhalation is the physical world's principle of breath. Tefnut is the cosmic moisture, whose name is derived from Tef to moisture. She is the principle of diffusion, a sensation in the physical world. Tefnut circulated the breath made manifest by Shu. Continuing with the previous pair, the next pair that emerges from Atum represents the forces that stimulate the body's growth and augment it after embodiment through the father image, Geb, and mother image, Nut. The Nut is depicted with the vase of water as her crown, representing the realm of Nun through which all are connected, the fluid of life that has descended into the earthly realm through her body. She also symbolizes the amniotic waters that support its growth and birth in her womb. Egyptian reliefs depict her being supported in the sky by her father Shu, who breathes life into the developing soul. While it is on its journey through the heavens, the soul is nourished by the Nuts. Later in Egyptian history, her image encased the deceased within a coffin rather than covering the interior roof. In initiatory texts, her two sycamore trees are described as a refreshment for the sojourner and are represented by the two fish in the constellation Pisces today. The cosmic umbilicus joins the earthly life stream with the celestial life stream. It is represented as an outstretched body covered with stars, Siu, over the earth. They represent the souls of earth returning to their cosmic mother, the sky. Additionally, the Siu symbolizes the celestial aspect of a netta or natural force. Those stars and planets are contained within the body of Nut, who houses them. Egyptian five-pointed stars also represent the five senses of human life, which receive nourishment from Nut and communicate with nature. Her function in the physical world is that of a mother to the soul, as it manifests and nourishes the seed that will be reborn into the sky. A passive, beneficent Geb is shown to create terrestrial Neteru at Heliopolis. Geb and Nut's earth and sky union is depicted in reliefs with him in a recumbent position and his counterpart outspread in the heavens above, held by their father, Shu. Various paintings depict Geb with phallus erect, awaiting Nut's descent before fertilization, asleep or twisted in a somersault position. Symbolist scholar Nora Romney believes it is difficult not to see an allusion here to the rotation of the earth on itself, in the opposite direction from the apparent motion of the sky. One symbol of the Netta is the Ka pillar, which symbolizes the abundance of offerings given to the Neteru, especially trees, plants, herbs, and grain. A bundle of Nile plants represents the fruits of the fields that nourish divine life, and the soul during its passage through the Duat, or shadow world. At various festivals and ritual appearances throughout the sacred year, the Neteru receives the Ka pillar. The annual Great Offering ceremony is depicted with the lotus and papyrus pillar in temple sculptures and tomb reliefs. As a domesticated and fertile goose, Geb's attributes are summarized in his image as the Great Cackle. They are well known for their lifelong attachment to their mates and loving care for their eggs and young. A progenitor of earthly life, Geb was also known as Urpa, the chief of the Neturu. He represents the principle of creation. As a patron of agriculture in Egypt, he acts as vegetation. Asar, the firstborn of the divine brethren, is the son of Geb, who brought vegetative life to earth. As a result, he creates all matter from primeval matter that originated from the sacred waters, emitted the divine fire, and then descended from ancient times to the present day through the cosmic worlds. Asar is sometimes depicted in inverse, circle wound position, just like Geb. Asar, like his father, does not maintain the daily revolution. The life cycle of this neter is a complete circle, from hibernation to birth, growth, and completion, and then death and hibernation again. His form symbolizes the cyclical revolution of the life force. He was named Un-Nefer, which means to spring up. The hieroglyphic sign representing his name in this aspect is the hare, a symbol of spring in many cultures, and of reproduction in nature. The hare, according to Asar, represents the circulation of the individual life force, which rises from this life into the next. Asar is also known for its four-tiered Djed column. Auset found the trunk of the acacia tree in which Asar was buried after his death and found it in amulet form. Symbolically raised at his restoration, it is thought to represent the spinal cord of the god. Each tier corresponds to one of the four regions of the spine: the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral vertebra. The Djed column represents the principle of renewal, which Asar maintains in his role as sovereign over all human beings, since he serves as the prototype for the human form. In his time, Plutarch retold the myth as a historical record of the Assyrian religion. In his opinion, Asar was murdered by Set on the 17th of Athis, which falls in November, Scorpio, the cycle of death and renewal. According to the lunar calendar, he died in his 28th year, which refers to the number of days in a lunar cycle. The dismembered body of Neter was taken to the mythic island of Flame by his sisters Auset and Nebtet, where 14 parts, half of the lunar cycle, were collected and reassembled in a mystical transformation, which became the prototype of Egypt's funerary tradition. It became the pyaxis of the Assyrian mysteries throughout Egypt in cyclic festivals for the living and funerary ceremonies for the dead after Asar's relics were discovered. Asar represents the cycle of seasonal and lunar rhythms associated with the moon. Egypt considers the soil itself to be the body of the Neter, which is constantly renewing the life that springs from its depths. Egypt's land was called Kem, the Black Land. The Arabs called it Al-Kemi. Asar, in this context, is the black Neter, that which has yet to be realized and sown. He was transformed as he went through the cycles of Genesis, growth, fruition, decay, and latency. Hence, Asar represents the germination function, the essential power of creation. Set is the warring brother of Asar, who plotted and murdered his younger sibling through a series of nefarious acts. Human life is marked by many vicissitudes, as these events show. Asar's body is encased by trickery in a lead coffin that perfectly fits his form in the first act. The heaviest metal lead is an ancient alchemical symbol for the physical body. The body of Asar is then thrown into the Nile, where it floats far from his home. Auset, his sister wife, discovers the coffin inside the acacia tree trunk. This represents the journey into the world of physical reality. The body of Set is dismembered, and parts are thrown into the Nile, which Auset and Nebtet collect. Asar's dismemberment by Set symbolizes human mortality, governed by division and multiplication. Following this segment of the myth, the Assyrian mysteries continue, but Set lives on to face Heru in a symbolic confrontation between spirit and matter of cosmic proportions, until his power is vanquished. But he is also assimilated into the figure of Heru. Set was like the Greek concept of Typhon, the destroyer. Set in his role as predator or divider is represented by all the Typhonic figures, including the spotted leopard, the ox, the ass, the pig, the boar, the serpent, the crocodile, the scorpion, the feminine aspect of this figure. Material life is portrayed in these images as an inescapable, recurrent motion that swallows and absorbs everything else for the sake of survival. The rhythm of nature is purely physical, undifferentiated spirituality. In this way, Set fulfills the principle of fixation, which functions as corruption in the physical realm when allowed to spread. There is also a connection between Set and the crocodile and the funerary literature of the late period with Apep, a hybrid of the crocodile and the hippopotamus. He appears in this form to devour the soul who has not passed the weighing of the heart against truth in the judgment hall. Set illustrates the engulfing power of the physical form, which encloses the soul in a living human again, after failing the weighing of the heart. In the same way that the hippopotamus signifies reproduction, the combined power of the crocodile and the annihilation principle depicts the soul's return to the physical world. The metaphor also reveals that return to earthly incarnation occurs when the passions of death outweigh the resolutions taken during the deceased's life. This strange variety of figures has puzzled Egyptologists for years. Some suggest that the Set animal frequency found in hieroglyphic notation refers to an extinct breed of ferocious hunting dogs. Scholars have been puzzled by this and other strange figures, to where some have suggested that the fantastic animals of Egyptian sacred literature are meaningless fabrications. The most apparent specification of this appears in the passage where Wallace Budge, in an unusual lack of insight into Egyptian symbolism, says that we have several examples of winged and many-headed serpents, which the artist invented for his amusement and to add to the mystery of the texts he was writing. A faithful mourner, Nebt-Het, is depicted weeping at her brother's embalmment and funeral in several Assyrian temple restoration scenes. Water forms the crown of Nebt-Het, which the Netta represents as the principle of secretion. She also provides the waters of life and fulfills the nurse's role in the young Heru. In her late period forms of Meskhenet, birthhouse, the Netta of childbirth, and Renenet, the goddess of nursing, she represents the restorative process of healing. The funerary papyrus of Anai and the magical papyrus Westcar depict them as guardians of the deceased. Nebt-Het's function in the physical world is sustenance. Nebt-Het acts as an intermediary for those who have passed on in the inner life, providing nourishment and protection. According to the Egyptians, this was essential in the post-mortal state when the body was restored with sacred fluids from its desiccation as a mummy to its functional human-like form. For this reason, the Netta is associated with immediate post-mortal existence and the raising of the soul through her wings and with her offering bowl to refresh the newly born soul. Ulset enjoyed the most respectful and revered treatment in Egyptian religion as the last of Nut and Geb's children. Fourth-born, she is primarily associated with the number 4 and is regarded as the Egyptians' good number, day, and configuration. 4 represents physical manifestation and established existence in Pythagorean symbolism derived from the sacred science, which relates to the Netta who gives birth to reality. She is praised for giving birth to the child Heru in Assyrian mythos, whose details are like those of the Christian Saviour's birth. The Netta fulfills the principle of fruition in this role. Ulset's Tet symbol is often referred to as the girdle or buckle of the Netta. They say it represents her womb, which gives birth to all life on earth. The Tet also grants the ability to know the words of power that protect a person from evil forces. An intriguing account of the origin of that protection is found in the Turin Papyrus. Ra, the solar principle, loses his vitality as he ages. He summons Neteru, who has departed from my body, to remove the poison that rattles his bones after being bitten by a poisoned serpent. He takes advantage of this opportunity to elicit the words of power that Ulset knows in heaven and on earth. He will dispel the poison in exchange. Her most potent name is Mistress of Spells and All Magic, after she succeeds. The throne of Ulset is the seat of her earthly manifestation, the royal lineage. Through birth, she functions in the physical world. In ancient Egypt, marriage between a male and a throne princess has gained kingship. The eldest daughter of the dynasty received this title, representing the earthly manifestation of Ulset's power. As the custodian of her throne, the seat of divine power on earth, she was also the custodian of her throne. As Heru incarnate, the throne of Ulset represents the Heliopolitan tradition of divine succession, passing the royal Ka, pharaonic soul, from one king to another. Heru, the prototypical mother of humanity, received it through the Neteru of the Ennead. Heliopolitanism, the tradition of the sun. Pythagoras of Samos, ca. 580 to 496 BCE, an originator of theoretical arithmetic, studied in the mystery schools of Egypt, and was a student of the Temple of the Sun at Heliopolis for 25 years. At his philosophical school in Crotona, Italy, he taught a legendary science of numeration that posited 9 essential rhythms of the universe. In his organization of manifest reality, the numbers 1 through 9 represent every expression of the life force which the Heliopolitan Ennead traditionally embodies through the functions of its Neteru. In metaphorical terms, the 9 Neteru represent the 9 months of human gestation and the 9 components of physical embodiment and growth in mammals. During Atum, the spirit descends into the physical matrix. Tefnut represents the ovum and Shu represents the sperm. Geb provides the fetus with the umbilical cord, nourishing the fetus with amniotic fluid. When the spirit enters the womb and is enclosed in the body, Asar occurs, and Set occurs when the spirit is separated from its original state and attached to human life. The womb gives birth during Orset's pregnancy, and Nebt Het feeds the newborn infant. Dendera's triad. As the spirit takes on earthly form, it expands or augments physical, emotional, and physical levels. Dendera represents the transformations that occur during the various stages of the development of a being on earth in the triad of Neteru. As the figurehead of Egyptian goddess worship, Het Her is associated with the sky, the earth, and the shadow worlds. Typically, Neteru's traditional crown, made of the solar disk resting between the waxing and waning crescent moons, is loaned to other female Neteru to symbolize the nurturing and growth provided by the earthly mother. Besides symbolizing light and shadow, or spirit and matter, this crown also represents the principle of fertilization. Het Her's natural function as a nurturer is expressed by her dual association with the cow, feeding the growing royal child on earth and the newly awakened soul in heaven. In both instances, she was said to greet the sojourner with her sacred number 7 forms. Het Her was not confined to ancient Egypt's borders throughout ancient times. In antiquity, there were 7 known shrines to the goddess, representing the 7 forms of the Neter present at every human birth or death. Legend has it they were in Thebes, Heliopolis, Aphroditopolis, Amu, Heracleopolis, Keset, and the Sinai. Neter is said to have 7 navels corresponding to the 7 degrees of latitude that encompass the lands of Egypt. Sarajit el-Haddam was discovered in southern Sinai in the 1980s. As the specific identity has not been established and is a controversial subject, archaeologists at the University of Tel Aviv feel this may be the original Mount Sinai of biblical record. A cave with Proto-Sinaitic carvings is 1 mile from an Egyptian temple dating 700 years before the Exodus. From the time of Moses, inscriptions in the cave include the word El, Hebrew for God. Het Her's sacred precinct includes the temple and cave. The Israelites' worship of a golden calf before receiving their commandments from Moses is likely a historical event. Het Her's menat resembles the old ceremonial collar, a peculiar symbol. Moreover, it corresponds to the power of expansion of the Neter, and as an amulet, it grants the ability to restore the lungs' natural function in the shadow worlds. Priestesses rattled the menet during the religious ceremonies to awaken the Neter to earthly life and breathe in the sacred air of the sanctuary. Scepter of the Het Her is a sistrum rattle used to summon the sacred presence and drive away nefarious forces. The sistrum was usually surmounted by an image of a cow or the bovine's ears of Het Her's sacred animal to invoke her protection. As a medium for Jehuti's cosmic words of power, the sistrum is also a vehicle for evoking motion, time and space. This is how Het Her functions in the physical realm. The Heru figures appear in other cosmogonies related to Heru as part of the Dendera spiritual cycle. The term Het Her refers to the house of Heru, a name referring to both of her roles as the mother to Heru Behutet and Heru Pakat, the heir and avenger of Asar. The name Nubt, meaning the gold, refers to her perfect qualities of reflecting the sun. Despite her popularity in the places where she was honored, she should be understood in context with her union to Heru, as the Egyptians regarded her. Heru first appears as Heru-Ur, the elder hawk. As a seed in Nut's womb, he is sometimes depicted as a member of the Heliopolitan Ennead in latent form. Asar, when hibernating, fertilizes this seed, and it is born as Heru Behutet, consort of Het Her, the avenging hawk. The elder Heru exists as a potentiality, The younger Heru comes to life as an antidote to physical existence, with inherent dualities. Another figure arising from the Heliopolitan rhythm is Heru Habenu, the crown prince and heir to Asar's throne. A Bennu bird and a heron that lives in the holy tree of Heliopolis are his sacred animals. The bird is described as the legendary phoenix rising from the fire cyclically. This image is passed on to Pharaoh, the living embodiment of the principle of ascension, as is the hawk-like Bennu bird. The human body comprises lower and higher forces, matter and spirit. In human life, Heru represents a fourfold process of these forces. A person belongs to the earth, physical life, the sky, home of the spirit, the inner life, the shadow worlds, and the succeeding generations, the future. In ancient times, the fourfold divisions of the day depicted the metamorphosis of spirit and matter. Heru represents humanity's past, present and future. Throughout each phase, subtle pictures depict Neter's journey from youth to maturity. Heru is the hawk, who ascended from the deep of right hibernation, Heru-Ur, traversed the sky and descended back to earth as guardians of both day and night, Heru-M-Akuti. He reappears in the morning light, Heru-Parkat, revealing the transmission of innate intelligence into his new form. Additionally, he battles with the forces of darkness to ensure innate intelligence's ascent through the confines of matter once more, Heru-Behutet. Heru's victories through these rhythmic battles are symbolized by the triple crown he wears, the Hememet. Besides the gold twin plumes of the Bennu bird on each side, the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red headdress of Lower Egypt are a composite. On male Neteru, the white crown symbolizes the function of the cerebral cortex and the development of logic. Many Neteru and queens wore red crowns, with the spiral extension symbolizing the cerebellum, which controls reflexes and equilibrium. Logic and instinct are combined in the two crowns. Heru represents the balance of Maat, truth, in the spirit and material worlds, where Heru exists and acts as master. In the Memphite triad, Heru-Parkat is the earthly mirror image of the cosmic child Nefertum, the lotus-born sun. Humanities are regenerated by possessing both spiritual and material functions. Ihai at Dendera embodies the perfection of physical form. The right active finger of Ihai is shown on the lips. Heru was the patron of the mystery tradition in the Hermetic milieu, which describes this Neter's hushed, quiet posture. He has attained his knowledge through mastery of speech and application of the primeval creative utterance of Jehuti. Therefore, inherent intelligence is the initial realization and use of that intelligence, wholly resident in the soul, but as a child in the knowledge of itself. As a metaphor for uniting the soul with its original substance, Ihai uses the creative force to embody the Hermetic principle of insemination. He manifests himself in the physical world through the function of procreation. He symbolized the conscious transmission of divine life into the worldly sphere through sexual rhythm. Potent in youth but channeled as the expression in maturity. As a metaphor for rhythmic expression, Ihai patronized ancient music. Besides the Ithyphallic Min, he was also associated with the spirit of Herui, the fifth Upper Egyptian nome of the two Heru. Triad of the initiation. The experience of a person's life proceeds from the rhythm established in the preceding cosmogony upon the descent of spirit into materiality and the embodiment of the soul as physical form. The Neteru, long associated with the mystery tradition of Egypt, represents the process through which the spirit escapes from matter. My spirit also elevates the body and soul by performing arcane processes symbolic in ancient alchemy. Sokar represents the body, Anpu the soul, and Heru-Ur the incarnate spirit. An Assyrian figure depicted as a mummiform man in funerary garb, Sokar was the Neter of the Saqqara necropolis. It is common to portray him lying in a sarcophagus, a metaphor for the soul's enclosure within the most intricate matrix of material existence, the body. As a vehicle of tremendous vital power, a physical form expresses a complex autonomic and automatic functions. The principle of latency, which Sokar represents, was associated with the solid, vital energy of the bull, which manifested as a physical power in his role as Lord of the Herd. In ancient times, several sacred bulls were considered vehicles of this spiritual principle, which their attendant priesthoods could ceremonially tap at cosmically potent times. The sacred bull Hap, Greek Apis, was known as the Bull of Saqqara. Later, he was aligned with other principles and became Ptah Sokar Asa, a Neter who possessed the triple powers of reanimation, incarnation, and restoration. Nem-Ur, Greek, was the bull of Heliopolis, and the physical solar principle passed from death to life. Bakha, Greek, Bukis, of Hermonthis, was also known as the bull of the mountains, because he embodied the declining life force in Upper Egypt's tombs, but he also absorbed its transformative powers. In physical life, Sokar embodies the function of inertia. In the necropolis, Anpu represents the process by which sentient life, deeply rooted in matter, becomes life-giving elements. The jackal, his sacred animal, often guarded ancient cemeteries. Often his name is interchanged with Apuat, the hound, whose name means opener of the way. Apuat was also depicted as a wolf in Lycopolis, Greek for city of the wolf. By doing so, Anpu awakens or releases the hibernating principle of Sokar into higher functions. The origins of Anpu are intriguing, considering that he is the son of Set and Nebthet. His association with decay and death makes sense. The physical shell of all things is Set, and the immediate post-mortal condition is Nebthet. Anpu bridges the two conditions. As an exclusive emblem of Anpu, the funerary Imyut, a ceremonial standard composed of an animal skin mounted on a lotus pole, accompanied the paraphernalia of the tomb. This symbol refers not only to death, but also to initiation in the mystery tradition. It symbolizes the shedding of the body by the departing soul. In reliefs, the Imuit is sometimes shown with blood draining from its orifice, symbolizing the body's life forces draining before it is transmuted into spirituality. The ceremonial Imuit was also used as a spiritual birth canal by rebirthing the spirit body through sacred libations. Anpu represents the principle of transmutation. Because of digestion, he breaks down and transmutes physical matter into the higher matter of the cemetery and the human body. By awakening the spirit which animates matter, Elder Heru completes the energy dynamic of the initiatory triad. When incarnation occurs, the Netta becomes active through the hibernation of Sokar, the inertia of the body, and the transmutation of Anpu, the purification of the soul. Heru-Ur's principle of exaltation ramifies initiation, the redemption of matter. Between the realms of undifferentiated cosmic spirit and the diversity of physical forms of the earth, humans serve the dual purpose of allowing innate intelligence to realize itself and providing raw matter with a divine embodiment. The physical manifestation of Heru-Ur is initiation. Hermanubis, described by Plutarch, is a fusion of the Heru and Anpu images in later times. A hawk and a jackal on two heads, he was known as the power of the two lands, who opened roads to the south and the north. The Neteru represents the conscious fusion of spirit and body in this sense. The Royal Triad of Thebes. Human existence is exalted in the Neteru of the Theban Triad. Through the sacred lineage of the gods, the royal house, innate intelligence has awoken and fulfills its divine mission on earth. Paut, the primeval substance in Pharaoh's body, awakens all in his presence and gives all life. In addition, this requires the expression of high wisdom so that other humans can live in harmony with nature. However, the word in Egyptian also means to make firm, establish, fortify. Amun's symbols, the goose and ram, are also related to Geb and Khnum, who are concerned with the family and progeny. The aristocratic principle, realizing one's sacred origin, functions Amun fulfills on earth as a father of the divine family, the royal house. He accomplishes this in his aspect as Kalmutef, who represents the creation of vital life in the human form and its transmission to the next generation via the male sperm. During the Middle Kingdom, Amun was the exclusive patron of the royal house. As a human being who is fully developed and mature, he was the Lord of Kings. As the descendant of the divine, Amun is both the fountainhead of human achievement on earth and the divine descendant in heaven. In this way, he is the origin of the theocratic tradition of Egypt, as embodied in the figure of Pharaoh. Their connection to their ancestors was unbroken by material existence. With a continuously developing heritage they drew and contributed. Traditions of ancient times, which had survived from endless past epochs, were traced not to establish authority or distinction, but to discern and perpetuate them. As the reliquary of innate intelligence awakened in earthly life, Amun represents both the past and the future of human experience and functions as maturation. Ancient Egypt's Queen Mother ensured the transmission of the royal Ka from one king to the next. During this process, Mut, Mother, acts as both incubator and protectress of the innate intelligence embedded in the royal Ka, which traces its descents to the gods. During this process, Mut guides the innate intelligence toward conscious realization. In Upper Egypt, she is the spirit of Ten, the third nome, the vulture goddess whose origins predate the earliest dynastic records. As the guardians of the two crowns of Egypt, the vulture goddess and her twin, Wadjet, the cobra, ensure that the noble inheritance is realized in any king or queen who is enthroned. As a guardian of an embryo, Mut also takes on the form of a vulture with its legendary protective instinct towards its eggs and young. Her principle also governs the intricate cycle of ovulation. In the physical world, Mut represents the principle of incubation. Child of their union, Khoens possess shrines at Karnak, Hermopolis, Ombus, and Behutet, each with a distinctive image. Despite having been called the Traveller, his character was created as the Slaughterer, for his slaying of specific cosmic forces to enable the king to eat or absorb their powers during the Pyramid Age, ca. 2700 to 2180. This alludes to the Netter's role as a transmitter of divine attributes, acquired as the royal person, undergoes the royal initiations, and becomes a representative of the Neteru on Earth. Khoens, a lunar symbol, the solar principle governs the physical body, was the Neter of the royal placenta in the Middle Kingdom, when the Theban triad served as a spiritual model for the royal house. Egyptians believed the fate of the placenta influenced the fate of the newborn, and various ceremonies were performed to protect it, ensuring a smooth birth. Khoens' headdress depicts the royal placenta being carried ceremonially on a standard before the king's processions. He serves as a guardian of the royal principle past, present, and future, just as his mother does. Khoens represents the succession of divine appearances on earth and the timekeeper of the royal house. While Khoens was associated with cosmic fecundity, he was also the Neter who would incarnate in a yet unborn royal person, which explains his frequent appearances without crowns and wearing the helmet of the immaterial world like Ptah. He wears a placenta shroud that represents the undifferentiated role of the royal child, while holding a bundle of scepters in his hands, each representing a different function to be served by future kings and queens. Khoens represents the principle of enumeration, playing the role of his cosmic counterpart, Jehuti, on Earth. Therefore the association between Neteru and the moon. He takes on the appearance of measurer for the individual spirit known as Hezep Ahau, reckoner of lifespan. In this aspect, he wears a crescent moon as a crown. In the physical realm, he functions like time. The tremendous celestial cycles of transformation are reduced to the mundane cycles of change embodied in the moon's rhythm. Funerary quaternaries. Though the spirit gains this knowledge through the progressive stages of its embodiment and transformation, the flesh is not heir to the divine mandate of eternal life. Natural forces govern the physical form to ensure the continuity of vital functions and return to the great life stream they originated. Besides the transmutation of the spirit through cosmic and earthly realms, the body's dissolution is also a critical phase of this journey. In this group, 4 sons of Heru are associated with Heru via the vitalization they transfer from the solar principle to physical form. The mystical transformations described in the ancient pyramid texts and late-period funerary and magical literature depend on Imset, Hapi, Daumutef, and Kebsenuf. The 4 genii are beneficent entities in the funerary tradition that guard mummified remains. According to esoteric theory, they represent the processes by which natural forces move through the human form and stabilize its functions. The animals take both human and animal forms, which signifies the unembodied, pure natural forces supporting organic forms and preventing dissolution or decay, may restore health to the body or give it supernormal strength due to their invocation. Additionally, they embody all kinds of life once dispersed and act as stabilizers. Reincarnation is the principle of returning the individual spirit to a human body, not recycling forces in nature. The Dynasty 5 Pyramid of Pepai contains an invocation to these Neteru, describing their mystic functions. Make the motions that will transfer life's fluid to Ossiferide Father, the sons of Heru Hapi, Daumutef, Imset, and Kebsenuf. As a result, he will be endowed with a substance before the gods. Exclamation 593. It is not a spiritually conscious principle, but serves as a terrestrial autonomic function that stabilizes sentient life and its environment. During these 4 genii, the Egyptians believed that disturbances in one world would alter the other. There is conflicting information about the rulerships and functions of the 4, which seem to change at different points in Egyptian history. Various Egyptological authorities have forwarded conflicting associations, showing that a scholarly word has been spoken regarding the symbolism of the funerary quaternary. Despite the uncertainty surrounding these Neteru, confidence can be said the following. One of Imset's titles is Leader of his Brethren. Personified with a man's head, he corresponds to the right side of the body and the west. An animal with a human-like head represents the unique qualities of mammalian life and conscious choice. He represents air, physically the liver's principle of coagulation. He performs acts similar to the Nile god, but his work is confined to the physical body rather than the river's substantial natural cycle. Neter's name means to circulate. His action is like that of the Nile god, but it is confined to the physical body rather than the river's great natural cycle. He is represented with a baboon head and associated with the lower regions of the body and the southern direction. Hapi refers to the principle of circulation and the function of the lungs. The element he represents is water. Baboon-headed figures represent the balance of natural forces and activity of periodic phenomena. Baboons were also images of the lunar functionaries Jehuti and Khans, and they sat counterpoised on the scale in the Hall of Judgment in the inner life. Embracing the principle of decomposition, his physical power lives in the stomach, and his element is earth. He transforms organic substances into vital energy, which corresponds to the upper regions of the body and the north. Daumatef also conjures up images of transmutation, since it is associated with the canine species. The hawk is associated with Kebsenuf, titled He Refreshes His Brethren. His physical function is the intestines, which are the seat of nutrient absorption. Fire is the element associated with his orientation on the left side of the body. In the funerary equipment, the four Neteru ruled over the vital canopic vessels containing the mummified organs they once comprised. By draining the vital energy from the body, the soul would be free of the sensations, hunger, thirst, breath, and desire. These organs impose when stimulated by their counterparts in nature. Physical natural energy sources for the temporary embodiment of lifeless or inanimate forms. During the late period, the four genii were invoked to accomplish enchantments, sometimes using their corresponding organs sourced from animals. Such practices continued into the 19th century in Africa. Triad of cyclic events. All natural phenomena are governed by cycles at the most fundamental level of existence. These pulsations are expressed in the cyclic triad, affecting everything in the physical world. Life goes metaphorically back to its watery roots in this triad. In the life-giving waters of the Nile, Taut the hippopotamus and Apep the crocodile both exist. Taut embodies the principle of multiplication, which ensures that organic forms grow at the cellular scale. As a pregnant hippopotamus, this Neter was worshipped in Egypt as a guardian of successful conceptions and births. Her association with physical growth cycles and parturition functions resulted from her frequent utilization to ensure the completion of natural pregnancy to term. The hieroglyphic symbol for the Sa, which represents the immaterial life force that permeates the universe, is often depicted on her, representing the energy she continuously transforms in her fertile, fruitful womb. It is believed that the androgen, a man with pendulous breasts and a womb wearing a crown of lotus flowers, is enshrined within a coiled serpent, the symbol of the circuit, circle or cycle, in a hidden cavern. According to his hymns, Hapi is everywhere, but he is not found anywhere. The Egyptians saw Hap as the summary of earthly existence, recurrence, transformation, and abundance. In the natural world of Egypt, his function is represented by the inundation of the Nile. In addition, he also represents the consummation of all life on earth by spiritual forces, which consistently return with unending vitality. As a result, Hapi embodies the principle of continuity. A typhonic animal, the hippopotamus, is depicted in red as Set, a color that symbolizes destruction and evil among the Egyptians. Taut can be described as a hippopotamus, the color of joy and constancy. Apep usually depicts crocodiles and hippopotamuses, dark and shadowy, sometimes taking the form of a serpent or demon. There has been much speculation regarding the context in which this figure was intended in the scheme of spiritual and physical genesis. Psychic consumption and nationalism symbolize the figure in the inner earth, which appears after the heart has been weighed to claim the unjust. A cosmogenesis cycle occurs once, but an anthropogenesis cycle continues. According to the ancient texts, the process is elective, but the powers that attract spirits in the immaterial and physical realms are also intriguing. Apep represents the spirit's continued journey through the realms of embodiment, beginning again with Atum in the Heliopolitan Ennead and ending with Apep in the cyclic triad. Cyclic triad divinities are entirely connected to cosmic epochs and natural cycles on Earth. The Milky Way in the sky and the Nile in Egypt are two sides of the same river, Hapi. it separates the eastern and western halves of the sky. In her role as keeper of the mooring post of the northern heavens, Turt contains and distributes the frequent manifestations of vital force in nature and maintains the rhythm of great ages foretold by the shift of pole stars. In addition, Apep speeds up the process of involution, the descent of the spirits into matter. His appearance in the sky heralds the descent of darkness and storms and the appearance of comets. The practice of a religion must be continuously adapted to the culture, the times, and the locale in which it is practiced. If it is not maintained, it becomes fossilized and cannot provide the spiritual foundation required to maintain a connection with natural and divine life. A system like this, complex and diverse at first glance, was continuously used in Egypt. It reveals the crucial components of the sacred science that have been alluding to throughout time, the Neteru. Families display natural dynamics that embody the intrinsic powers that belong to us and to which we belong. In addition, the celestial cycles themselves personify the stages of spiritual development that await human participation as they pass overhead. Wallace Budge pondered over the complexity of it all at the beginning of the 20th century, but acknowledged that the great antiquity and origin of Egypt's cosmogonies were fascinating. Our best guess is that these objects were the creations of some indigenous, dominant people who established their religious customs so firmly in Egypt that they survived all political commotions and changes and foreign invasions and thrived in the country at least until the 3rd century of our era. In Egyptian terms, the Neteru are never far away from human life. We can still admire some of the greatest legacies of art, architecture, and engineering that stem from this belief. According to the ancients, these accomplishments were merely byproducts of a vital spiritual practice that shaped the course of their lives and afterlives. Ancient Egypt's sacred science fully integrated the study of these times and the observation of divine manifestations from the earliest times. The Neteru were seen to transmit their unique qualities through the myriad forms of visible nature consistently and intimately, yet sometimes more potent than at other times. As a view of sky and earth, as one juxtaposed reality, this attitude shaped a technology that put a cosmic imperative ahead of all other considerations. Attributes of the Decans, Gnomes, and Neteru. In ancient times, initiation required knowledge of the denizens of the sacred regions, both sky and earth. On earth, the gnome spirits were the intermediaries between the divine forces and the Decan spirits. Human events are influenced by the Decans, according to the Hermetica. Decans bring about all events that befall humankind collectively. For instance, overthrows of kingdoms, revolts of cities, famines, plagues, overflowings of the sea, earthquakes. None of these things, my son, take place without the Decans at work, except from Hermetica. Everything from fractions of an hour to great cosmic cycles was a divinely appointed period in ancient Egypt. Hours, days, months, and years were determined by various methods, each with their religious significance. Throughout the night, celestial constellations moved across the vault of the sky, marking the passage of time. According to the Egyptians, different stars appeared at different times on the horizon at dusk, depending on the year. Then other stars followed in predictable patterns across the sky. Over time, consistent appearances of these stars led observers to incorporate them into a timekeeping system. This system includes 36 star groups that lie south of the ecliptic. Each group was given its name and spirit guardian. These groups have been compiled in lists most times, although the order and names may differ depending on the period of history etched on tombs or papyri. The number remains constant, and since the 36 figures divide the 360-degree ecliptic into 10-degree segments, they are often called decans, the Greek word for 10 parts. In modern times, the time that passes between the appearance of one decan and the next on the horizon at the equinoxes, when day and night are equal, is 40 minutes. Thus, the decans serve as nighttime markers. For half of the day, daylight obscures the stars so that not all 36 decans can be seen on the horizon. Each star will appear in the night sky in the year, which the Egyptians regarded as a sign of the beginning or end of a season. Thus the decans were also used as indicators of the months of the year in which they appeared at dusk. A spirit characterizes each decan and a netta that is associated with it. In the Heliopolitan rhythm of the 4 genii, the netta is often one of the significant celestial or terrestrial deities. Associations with the genii lightly describe the elemental quality of each asterism, since the decan was thought to promote certain conditions and results when appearing in the sky. This view embodies the essence of ancient Egypt's sacred astronomy, which was later transmitted to ancient Greece and Rome as astrological magic. Dendera's magnificent temple and Kuhn's temple at Esna illustrate the Deccan spirits in multiple zodiacal schemes, both linear and circular. In the circular zodiac, Dendera B, the decans are by how they align with the ecliptic. In the linear zodiac, Dendera E, the decans are by the way they overlay the zodiacal signs. Inscriptions of decan lists also appear in the tombs of royalty and nobles, with some of the finest examples appearing on the cenotaph of Seti I, 1303 BCE, and the ceiling of the unfinished tomb Senmut ad-Dea el-Bari, 1473 BCE. In the tomb, the Deen spirits served as a symbolic guide for the deceased through the celestial sphere, following passage through the Duat, allowing the exalted soul to reach Ra's son, Bark. The heavenly terrains represent segments of the heavenly realm over which the deceased are governed and protected from nefarious forces, even in the heavenly regions, darkness can impede the journey of the sun. In the oldest lists, decans begin with the star Sirius, called Sopdet by the Egyptians. From the elliptical position of Sirius at the Sothic cycle at 2780 BCE, the preceding list proceeds by 10 degrees. Currently, the position of this star is 12 degrees 59 minutes of Cancer in the tropical zodiac, or 19 degrees 15 minutes of Gemini in the sidereal zodiac. Unlike modern astrologers, ancient Egyptians measured stars along the elliptical as their positions gradually changed over time, rather than in tropical, stationary terms. As Egypt says, Sirius rose heliacally at the summer solstice in the beginning of time. Thus Sirius should begin at 0 degrees Cancer in a tropical arrangement of the decans. The Seti 1b list, the oldest group, comprises the preceding decans. Archaeoastronomer Otto Neugebauer and Richard Parker have extensively studied ancient Egypt's timekeeping texts. Rupert Gleadow and Cyril Fagan are astrological historians who have provided additional details. In Dendera Temple of Hether, there are two places where the Seti 1b list is located. On the west side of the Hall of Appearance, on the west side of the main temple, the list is engraved on the ceiling of the outer hypostyle wall and the walls of the so-called Silver Room. The spirits of Nome. Ancient cosmologists were influenced by geography. The physical geography of ancient Egypt corresponds to the sky, though the apparent parallel between the 42 Neteru and the 42 Nome spirits has been overlooked. Both symbol systems are derived from a sacred tradition that expresses the interdependence of the realms of sky and earth. It is not a coincidence that the figures in both systems are the same in number and function. A common notion that most indigenous peoples share is that a locality's identity and power are communicated to its environs, and as a result, geography reflects the cultural consciousness of the people. A place can develop its own spirit in connection with the natural phenomena of the area. The place becomes so individual in a culture that it becomes distinguishable from the public image of a lake, river, or mountain. The gods of lakes, rivers, and mountains are known for their sacred names and images. Ancient Egypt had 20 nomes in the delta and 22 in the valley, each with a capital where the shrine of the Nome spirit was maintained. There was a connection between this city or town and heavenly places, considered the navel or center of the home. Nome standards or totems were kept at this shrine at all times, except for times of crisis or invasion, when they were brought to the battlefield to unleash their incredible power. Totems were believed to embody Nome spirits that could communicate with a Neter at its temple or support Pharaoh's army. In Egyptology, such instances are incorrectly seen as relics of tribal thinking or animistic superstition, overlooking the fundamental belief of the people of Egypt's variant regions that they physically belong to the land. Symbols embodied the power of the Nome spirit in the Nome standard. All the Nome standards were represented in inscriptions or physical form at significant temple centers in Egypt, allowing a divine outpouring from the temple to be symbolically carried back into the Nome at periodic intervals. Nearly always, inscriptions on the base stone of the temples depict the Nome spirit's images and characteristics in plants and animals, and signify that their power comes from a divine source. Besides the presence of the Nome spirits at the magnificent temples, the name symbolized another concept in Egypt's esoteric tradition, the undistorted reflection of the sky, the Neteru on earth. Physical land was regarded as a mirror image of divine regions. In this way, the Nome spirit served as an intermediary, connecting the Neteru with the physical world. They were the Genii Loci of the land and united it with the sacred regions. Through the character of the gnome's spirit, the esoteric function of the gnome is revealed. Khenti-Amenti was the nature spirit of Upper Egypt's eighth home, a figure that guarded the hidden land of the deceased Amentet and led the way there. Amentet's entrance, over which Assar presides, was once believed to be between Thynis and Abydos, between the two hills, a reference to Khenti-Amenti's shoulders. As the earliest burial place of royal persons in Egypt, Thynis was later incorporated into Abydos and assumed the nomenclature of the Shrine of the Head, similar to that of the Assyrian relic depicted in the reliefs at Abydos, where the head of Assar is said to be enshrined. Khenti-Amenti, Earth's governor, took the form of Assar as a shadowy mirror image of the celestial power with which he was associated. In its role as the head of Assar's terrestrial body, Abydos symbolized the place where Neter's form extended northward over the Nile. The Neteru, its principles and functions. Both general and personal principles can be understood as part of the Neteru. As part of the great reservoir of Egyptian literature, thousands of hymns and litanies enumerate Neter's qualities and show the realms in which it manifests, sometimes in seemingly unrelated contexts. She is also hailed in her great litany as mistress of spells, weaver and fuller, daughter of Geb, child of the universal Lord, daughter of Nut, first royal wife, whose son is Lord of the earth, whose husband is the inundation of the Nile. Besides religious adoration, these enumerations represent more. The four realms represent the Neter's power, human cosmic temple and nature. We can gain insights into the possibilities of human consciousness through these symbolic devices by analyzing their aspects and places in the cosmological scheme.